I tried to build feelings in my imagination like the killer had, so that I would know why he did what he did, because that would help me find him.
And the way he felt that bad?
Kevin, they're the ugliest thoughts in the world.
Will Graham isn't alone. In the universe of director Michael Mann, a man is what he does. To be the best, a master thief, a legendary cop, a brilliant profiler, requires a dangerous, all-consuming focus. And while celebrated for thrilling action scenes, Mann's real genius is in showing us the cage built by that focus. The inescapable trap of masculinity, where professional skill comes at a devastating personal cost. A cost many real-life men are expected to pay in silence. Mann's approach to masculinity tends toward the fatalistic, a philosophy longtime fans of the director have dubbed Manxed. It's a specific brand of world weariness in which men are defined only by their role, resigned to a life of loneliness without the language to communicate their pain, recognized only by those who occupy their specialized world. It is also the most sympathetic, non-cartoonish portrayal in the mainstream media of the manosphere philosophy.
Ain't a hard time been invented that I cannot handle.
At the heart of Mann's most popular works is a distinctly American archetype, the professional man. His value is forged in the crucible of his work, built on a rigid foundation of duty, honor, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. It's a cultural script that celebrates the successful performance of this role, while demanding that its immense emotional cost, the melancholy, the pain, the despair, remains buried. For this man, strength is silent, and the burden must be invisible. Take Frank, James Caan's protagonist from Mann's Thief, arguably Mann's first masterpiece. We see his excellence in every frame. His movements are precise, his planning meticulous. He is the archetypal professional man. But this obsessive competence isn't just for the score. It's the engine for a dream. One he shows his future wife Jessie in the form of a collage, a postcard from his future self to his past self, reminding him of the things that he needs. This longing for domestic normalcy was born in the violence of a prison cell, where he was forced to kill his own humanity to survive.
You gotta forget time. You gotta not give a fuck if you live or die. You gotta get to where nothing means nothing.
Frank's story is a precursor to a modern phenomenon. In a cultural landscape where traditional role models are failing, many men are turning to the principles of Stoicism to find structure and meaning. A trend identified by writer Brock Covington in his Substack article, Why Stoicism Attracts Men. Young men are drawn to ideals of self-control and the elimination of fear, a performance of mastery over a chaotic world. This is Frank's reality. He's using a rigid self-made code to claw his way back to a life he was always told he could achieve through thrift, industry, and hard work. Frank is tragically convinced that his will is stronger than the world itself.
I worked this out. And that is my life. Nothing, nobody can stop me from making that happen.
14 years later, Michael Mann gave us Neil McCauley in Heat. McCauley is Frank's thematic successor. If Frank was a man building a fortress against the world, Neil is a ghost, already detached. His code isn't a means to an end, it is the end.
Don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner.
What are you, a monk?
I have a woman. I tell her I'm a salesman.
Neil's famous 30 seconds rule isn't just about avoiding capture. It's about avoiding connection. It's a philosophy of preemptive loss. He's already relinquished the dream Frank was chasing. He knows that attachment as a liability. Not just practically, but emotionally. But the real tragedy of this scene isn't just Neil's cult philosophy. It's the quiet mirroring between him and Vincent Hanna, the weary cop across the table. Hanna, ostensibly on the side of normalcy, is just as trapped in his own code. Hanna and McCauley may be on opposite sides of the law, but they're on the same side of Mann's view of professionalism as manhood.
I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best, trying to stop guys like me.
Hanna's obsession with stopping the McCauleys of the world has led him to neglect his wife and stepdaughter. He knows it, but he doesn't seem to be able to pull himself away. As he tells Macaulay,
I don't know how to do anything else.
and of course he doesn't. He doesn't know how to be a husband or a father. Sharing and empathy are not the skills that he practiced.
Because I got to hold on to my angst. I preserve it because I need it.
This is the heart of masculine fatalism, a bleak outlook in which men are resigned to hopelessness, and the culture that calls on them to sacrifice their emotions in order to get the job done, and then criticizes them when that suppression can't simply get turned off when they walk through the front door.
That's pretty vacant.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It's what Reddit colloquially calls the black pill, a cultural maze in which all choices lead to a minotaur of depression and hopelessness. Hannah has the trappings of a normal life, a wife, a stepdaughter, but as the argument with his wife Justine makes brutally clear, it's a hollow victory. He's as emotionally unavailable as the criminal he hunts, and despite being filled with family and dead tech postmodernistic bullshit, Vincent's house is as empty as Macaulay's.
You don't live with me. You live among the remains of dead people. That's the only thing you're committed to. The rest is the mess you leave as you pass through.
In Manhunter, Hannibal Lecter tells Will Graham to smell himself if he wants the scent of a madman. The diner scene is Hannah smelling himself on Macaulay. He sees the cost of the code, and he pities Neil for thinking he could escape it, even while being impressed by his discipline. Neil's tragedy, then, is that he mistakes discipline for freedom. He believes that by severing all ties, he can control his fate. But in Mann's universe, the code always wins. It's not a shield, it's a noose. And yet, Macaulay feels it tightening. We see him haunted by the ghost of a life that Frank was still fighting for. In a tender moment, he leaves a glass of water for Edie with the same careful perfectionism he uses as a professional thief. He sneaks away from his crew to call her, his face betraying a desperate need for connection. He wants a life that isn't vacant and hollow, but his own code forbids it. He is his own jailer. If Frank thinks that he can impose will to power, Neil thinks he can remove suffering by removing desire, and Vincent Hanna thinks that suffering is just a man's fate, then Will Graham is the one-man character that rejects the black pill, accepts the pain of being the hero, and still retains his humanity. Like Hannah, Will Graham was in law enforcement. But unlike Hannah, he got out. He learned how to do something else. When we meet him in Manhunter, he is living the very life of domesticity that Frank so desperately wanted. A quiet home in Florida, helping his wife Molly with dinner, building a turtle farm with his son. It is, as Neil Macaulay derisively put it, a life of barbecues and ball games. And Graham, if not explicitly happy, is deeply aware of its intrinsic value.
Got it pretty good, don't we?
We have more than good. All that happened to you before lets you know that.
This contentment is shattered when his old boss, Jack Crawford, arrives to pull him back in. Two families are dead, and Graham has the terrifying, innate ability to get inside the minds of killers, a kind of empathy so profound it nearly destroyed him once before. Crawford knows this, and resorts to a clumsy but effective form of manipulation, questioning Graham's manhood by suggesting he might be too sensitive to look at the crime scene photos. Graham recognizes the ploy but looks anyway, which is what makes the manipulation all the more insidious. They're just pictures of happy families. Will Graham is not manipulated by threats to his manhood. He's manipulated by threats to his empathy, a burden he begrudgingly accepts. Molly, however, is not like Jesse or Edie, hopelessly drawn to a dangerous man. Nor is she like Justine, a fed-up pessimist. She is a partner acting out of genuine concern, challenging Crawford for pulling her husband back into a world that almost killed him. She understands both the duty he feels and the price he will pay, and her strength becomes the anchor that makes his return home even possible.
I'll be here whenever you come home. I'll meet you if you need me to. Anywhere. Anytime.
Graham's return to the fold isn't exactly a hero's welcome. Unlike Mann's other protagonists who find home in their work, Graham is an outsider in his own field. Crawford treats him like a tool. The FBI's Dr. Chilton treats him like a specimen.
I understand he cut you pretty good.
And the beat cops treat him like some sort of grifter psychic. To them, his empathy isn't a gift, it's a useful abnormality. To reawaken the ability to empathize with the killer, Graham must visit the man who personifies the Abyss, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. This visit isn't just for information. Graham needs to feel Lecter's presence, to get the scent of the monster again. Lecter senses this immediately and exploits it, delivering the ultimate diagnosis.
The reason you caught me, Will, is you're just alike. You want the scent? Smell yourself.
And this is Graham's central struggle. How much understanding becomes identification? How long can you stare into the abyss before it stares back? But in this film, the Abyss, the true face of masculine fatalism, isn't Will Graham. It's the killer he's hunting, Francis Dollarhide. Dollarhide is the ultimate incel, a man whose fatalistic views about his own attractiveness lead him to destroy the very intimacy he achieves with blind woman Reba. His warped sense of sexual reality makes him assume that he's unlovable. And when he does find potential love, his delusions cause him to think she's cheating on him with a coworker. Dollarhide is the man who succumbs entirely to the black pill. Graham's fight isn't just to catch a killer, it's to avoid throwing away the happiness he does have the way that Dollarhide did. Will dives into the void one more time in order to stop Dollarhide, sending Molly away in a symbolic act. If Molly represents the domesticated, content, and even feminine side of Will Graham, then stowing her away in his mind and his heart are necessary to thinking like Dollarhide. With Molly gone, Graham calls Dr. Lecter again, and Lecter tells Will that killing feels good because it's about power. Taking a life is the ultimate power trip, and that's why an egomaniac like God enjoys it so much.
Why does it feel good, Dr. Lecter?
If one does what God does enough times, one will become as God is.
It is this exchange that gives Will the key to understanding Dollarhide's motive. He wants to be desired, and in order to force these attractive women to desire him, he has to kill them and arrange them in the way that he wants. This leads Will to recognize Dollarhide's reliance on visual pleasure, which, coupled with Dollarhide's impossible knowledge of the leads in Jacoby's routines, reveals that Dollarhide has seen both sets of home movies. Graham and Crawford race to St. Louis in a Learjet, just in time to kill Dollarhide and save Reba. If Molly represents Will's humanity in the face of a cruel world, then Dollarhide represents his desire for violence and power. And that makes this an act not just of Will putting his mental health on the line in order to save a stranger, but an act of catharsis. Will Graham has finally exorcised the demons left there by Hannibal Lecter. The proof that Graham rejects this fatalism lies in his actions. Where Frank declared his marriage over and Hannah resigned himself to failure, Graham makes a different choice. He sends his family away not as a permanent severing, but with a promise to return. When Crawford makes the offer, Will talks it over with Molly, and though she believes that Will has already made his decision, she tells him that it would be selfish of her not to let him go. And throughout the ordeal, he does what others would not. He communicates. He repeatedly checks in with Molly, discussing his feelings and maintaining his connection to the world of domestic tranquility. He recognizes that you need vulnerability and trust to claw your way out of the pit. But he also does not deny that there is a need inside of him that is potentially very dark and violent. It slips out over the phone when Molly tries to pull him back and he snaps at her about the color of the kitchen paint. And later, when they meet up in a hotel room, she asks him if he remembers their first meeting.
And something flickered across your face like a shadow. I said, "What's that?" Remember what you said?
I said, this is too good to live.
On the surface, it's a romantic expression of overwhelming happiness. But in the context of our thesis, it's something much darker. It's the voice of masculine fatalism. Even in the most perfect moment of connection, a shadow crosses his face. Why? Because the trauma he carries has taught him that goodness is fragile, and that he, specifically, is a vessel for the ugliest thoughts in the world. His line is a perfect expression of preemptive loss. It's the core belief that underpins the actions of most of Mann's other men. Frank believes that he has to meticulously cage and control the good life because he assumes it's under constant threat. Neil has to take it a step further. He believes that the good life is disposable, a liability to be jettisoned in 30 seconds flat. Hannah believes his angst is a tool that he needs, and that any attempt at the good life is a distraction from his true purpose. Will's line reveals that he shares their core fear. He's looking at his own happiness and waiting for the other shoe to drop. He believes that the darkness inside him disqualifies him from something so pure and good. At that moment, he's still trapped.
Time is luck, Will. I know the value of every single day.
This is the counter-argument. This is the line that spits out the black pill. Molly does something that none of the other women in Mann's films get the chance to do. She provides a viable, alternative philosophy. She doesn't deny the fragility of their happiness. She acknowledges it. But her conclusion isn't fatalism. It's appreciation. Her philosophy is the polar opposite of Neil Macaulay's. Neil's code is to not get attached to anything you can't abandon. Molly's code is to hold on tighter to the good things precisely because they aren't guaranteed. She knows the value of their days because she knows they are numbered. Fatalism and nihilism aren't synonymous. They're opposites. Fatalism denies responsibility for our actions. God told me to, Mercury's in retrograde, it doesn't matter, they're all crooks, we're all just plugged into the matrix anyway. Fatalism tells you that nothing means nothing, so don't bother. And anything bad that happens after that can be explained as God, fate, the stars, or society. Nihilism calls you to take responsibility for your actions, because they're not ordained. It doesn't disregard ethics, it demands them. And Will is able to understand this because he doesn't limit himself to binary thinking. Mann's characters tend to think in dichotomies: good, evil, freedom, imprisonment, man, woman, simple, complex. But Graham holds both sides of those concepts in his mind at once.
What, are you sympathizing with this guy now?
Absolutely. My heart bleeds for him as a child. As an adult, someone should blow the sick fuck out of his socks. Do you think that's a contradiction, Jack? Does this kind of understanding make you uncomfortable?
He accepts that darkness and rage are a part of him, but they don't have to rule him. Finally, after all the violence is over, he makes the choice that no other man hero could. He actively pursues his own rehumanization. In a crucial scene deleted from the theatrical cut but present in the director's cut, Will visits the Shermans. The family Dollar Hyde had planned to kill next. Mrs. Sherman is frightened by his face at first, but when they find out who he is, they welcome him into their home. Mr. Sherman even gives him a heartfelt thank you. Will politely declines to come in, telling them that he just wanted to see them. If going to Lecter was Will getting the scent again, then going to see the Shermans is getting the scent of normalcy. The red pill took him down the rabbit hole, and he needs the blue pill to return. This is what allows him to truly go home. He tried and succeeded where Frank, Hannah, and Macaulay fail. He accepts that the darkness will always be a part of him, but he proves it does not have to be the totality of him. Retaining his humanity will be a constant struggle, but for the first and maybe only time in a Michael Mann film, we see a man who is strong enough to win it. Stay cool, stay safe, wash your hands, return your shopping carts, make good choices, and I'll see you next time.